Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome to Aesthetic Imaging Video Tutorials. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at how we're creating this handwriting effect. This is an effect that I created years ago, and last night while I was, kind of doing a run through to make sure I still got it, I, for some reason, just changed the way I did it completely. This is completely different than I did it before, and it turned out really, really nice, I think. As you can see, we have this little ink bleed effect going on. We got these little patches of kind of brighter blue, darker blue. We got uneven texture. It looks pretty good. And then if you notice, as it writes on, it kind of fades in, like the ink is soaking into the paper. So these are all effects that are actually given to you in After Effects. So no third-party plugins, and I think it looks pretty fantastic. All right, so let's get started. All right, so first thing we're going to do is create a new composition. So we can do that by clicking on this little icon over here. We're going to call this main comp. Sorry if you can hear a dog barking in the background. That is Ellie Von Weenie. She's really annoying, and I wish she would stop barking all the time. All right, so the first thing we're going to do inside of our new composition is go down to here, right-click, go to New, Text, or you can go up to Layer, New, Text. All right, so we can type in After Effects. How about that? So this is the font we're using. It's called Texas Hero. It's actually from Adobe Typekit. So if you have that, you can pick it up. For this type of effect, I would say that the font choice is pretty important. You want something that looks good in cursive because if you used cursive text before, it's most of them look like, well, they look bad. This one looks pretty good. I like it. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to click on the After Effects text here, down here. And we're just going to make this bigger. Make it take up the whole screen. How about that? And let's make it a little bit taller. And what we're going to do is click on this faux bold option, because there is no bold option up here. All right, so now we have our basic text set up. So what we can do here is right-click, add a new solid, and we're going to call this stroke. Make sure it's the comp size, black, although the color doesn't really matter, and we're going to hit OK. So now on this stroke layer, we're going to go to Effects and Presets, and we're going to type in stroke. And we want to go to Generate Stroke. And we're just going to put that right on top of there. Now, the thing we need to do is create a mask or a path. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this layer, the stroke layer, invisible by hitting that eyeball. And make sure that your stroke layer is still actually selected. And we're going to go up to the pen tool over here. Now for cursive and doing a handwriting effect, it's really important to think about how you would write it in real life. For this font, I'm going to say maybe starts off here and then kind of curls around, comes up, comes back up here, and then so on. And then they get to the end here, and then loops back and makes a T. So we're going to get started on that. It's pretty simple. You just take your mask tool and just kind of get it onto these points here. So now we have this little curl, and you can come up here. You can adjust some of these. All right, so for this one, it's going to change direction pretty quickly, but we want it to kind of pull up and then down. So what we want to do is hit Alt and click on this little handle right here and pull it down. And this will allow you to edit only this side of the handle without affecting this side. So now we're going to come down to here. Pull this up. Pull this around. Bring the next point over here. Maybe, there you go. And again, we can just kind of play with these. Maybe add a point in here just to kind of keep it in the center there. Now for here, I think it goes down and then comes back around like this. So we're going to do that. Maybe create a point here. And then down to here. And really this part, it just takes a lot of patience. But you'll get there. Just keep working at it. Try and get a natural looking curves in there. All right, so we made it to the end here. So now we want to loop it back around to get the cross on the T. Now the way the stroke effect is going to work is it's going to animate along this path. Now if we just take this point and then, loop it over to here, it's going to write on pretty quickly. What we want to do is actually cause it to kind of animate through all of this so that there is a kind of a delay before it actually starts writing on here. And then we just kind of pull it across there. And if you want, you can waste some more time towards the end there. And what I mean by waste more time, let's actually set this up now. So let's start off by opening up our stroke here. And actually, let's start off by turning our layer back on and turning off our text. So we want to go up to where it says Path and go to Mask 1. Now you'll see if I hit Shift Command H, that'll get rid of the mask. And you see we have this beautiful line right here going across. And if we go to end here, bring this down to 0 and just kind of, we can see what it's doing. It's writing it on. All right, so we're going to set this to 100. And we're going to start messing around with some of these settings. We're going to turn this up quite a bit to 6. We're going to set the paint style to on transparent. You'll see nothing is really happening except for if we press this button right here. You can see that our background is now transparent rather than black. All right, and we're actually going to take the spacing, and this is going to look really funny for a little bit. So we're going to take this spacing and move it all the way to like 75. Now we have dots, and that doesn't look that great, honestly. So if we go down here and turn on our text now, what we're going to do is where it says track matte, where it says none, we're going to set this to alpha stroke. And you'll notice our little crazy little twirl over here is gone. And now you're only seeing the stroke effect where our text is. All right, so let's actually get into creating the second word. Let's change this to no track matte. With our stroke selected, let's hit Shift Command H to turn our masks back on. Now we can select this last point here and make sure that our pen tool is still selected. And we can bring this over to kind of finish this guy off right here, But there's another thing that we can do. What we can do is just create a new mask. Hit V, make sure that the current mask is not selected. Just select off of it. And then go back to your pen tool over here. And let's start off with this E. So I think the E is going to come out this way and then loop around. And then we're going to have a little pause here. And then it's just going to go off to the next. So let's get that started. All right, so we're going to maybe start off here. We're going to come around, maybe like that, and come back around this way. And here, come around this way. All right, now here's where it's going to get a little tricky. So we want it to kind of pause in between here rather than going directly to that. So let's do this. Let's hit Alt on the keyboard and kind of bring this point down this way and just kind of put some points in. Maybe edit this, make sure it's not touching any of the here we go. And then we're going to start off with creating this. All right, for the C, I think I'm going to come up here, curl around, go back around, and then shoot into the T. So let's do that. Now, if you're finding that your points are a little too close together, what you can always do is, like, I want to get this kind of close as possible to this edge. But unfortunately, this line that's already there is keeping me from doing that. So I can click out here, maybe adjust the mask, and then bring it down. I know this part is very tedious and not the most exciting, but it's really necessary for this, and you want to make sure that you have a good mask. Bring this over and down. Oh, okay. Now how do we do this? We got to get to this point from here. All right, so what we're going to do is just stop this mask right here. We're going to hit the V tool. I'm going to click outside of it, make sure it's not selected anymore, and we're just going to create a new mask going this way. And there we go. All right, so we have 3 masks going, but we notice we're at 100% and we don't have our stroke going across all of it. What we need to do is click on this all masks here. Now you see all of our masks have the stroke applied to it. So we can turn this back off, maybe set this to alpha matte stroke again. All right, so this is what we have so far. So now let's animate the stroke on. So twirl this back open. So we're going to go to the beginning here, and we're going to click on the stopwatch for end, but then we're going to change this to 0. And then we're going to go to 9 seconds here and change this to 100. Now let's watch the magic. And you notice there's a pause in between, the little cross on the T's and in between the words. But here's our basic effect. So now what we're going to do is select both of these layers and hit Shift-Command-C to pre-compose them. And we're going to call this text holder. And hit enter. All right, so now in our text holder, we see that we have a transparency. And we're going to use that to our advantage here. Now, this line is kind of thin. It doesn't look good. You got your dots going on. All right, so we're going to go to Effects and Presets, type in Minimax, not Minimax, not Minimax, but Minimax. All right, so we're going to add that to our text holder. And where it says operation, you want to make sure that that is set to maximum. And under channel, you want to go to alpha and color. So now we're going to bump this up. And we kind of want to make it a good size here. Yeah, that works. So now on top of that, we're going to add a roughen edges. So it's under stylize roughen edges. We're going to add that onto our text. You see what it's doing? We're already getting back that nice little lumpy texture that the original text had. All right, so we're going to make sure this is set to roughen, and we're going to raise the border just a little bit. And we'll actually bump this up. And you can see what this is doing. It's kind of, the higher the number, the more it cuts into it. So we're going to set this to about 8.4. All right, and we're going to turn the scale down. Something like that. I think that works. Maybe turn up the edge sharpness a little bit. Nice and crisp. All right, and last thing we're going to do in here is turn up the complexity. And we're just going to turn this up to, whoa, like 4. So now we have more of this jagged edge. And we can maybe adjust the scale a little bit more. So obviously the higher the scale, the more wavy the texture looks. The lower the scale, the more jagged the edges look. And we're going for like kind of like an ink bleed look. So maybe turn up the boundary a little bit. Or the border, whatever you want to call it. I mean, most people call it by the correct name. All right, so that looks good, I think. We got some nice little texture going on. Maybe turn down the scale even more. All right, that looks good. All right, so now we want to add our color to it. So we're going to go to Effects and Presets and type in Fill. Maybe close the roughen edges because we're done with that. And we want to make this kind of like a bluish color. Maybe like that. Darken it down a bit to like 50%. Turn down the saturation a little bit. There we go. So now actually what we want to do here is come into our project window, and I have these two assets. 2 paper assets. They're both from textures.com. You can sign up for a free account with them, and you get 15 downloads per day for free. You're limited by size, but for this case, it works out fine. So we have this first one. It's called Photo Plane 19 Masked. So we can just pop that down here, below here. Hit S on the keyboard, and we can just scale this up until it fits on the comp. There we go. And we want to take this text holder and set it to multiply. All right, so next thing we're going to...
Can you stop?
Excuse me?
Well, it's just that I'm from the future, and you've kind of done the
what do you
rest
mean?
of the tutorial wrong. So I'm gonna take over for you now.
Really? Did I? Okay, fine.
Okay.
Fine.
Cool. All right. Get out of here.
Fine.
Come on.
Get out of here. Go. All right, so thing. Microphone. Got it. All right. So what this doofus did is he took a couple steps and then realized that he took the wrong turn, and he went back and undid a lot of the work that he did to start over from that point. The one thing he did was go a little too far and change this back to normal, but never changed it again, which completely changed the final look. So now I have to come in here hours later and redo it for him. All right, so here we go. We're going to start off by changing this back to multiply, you dingus. All right, so now we got our multiply back up. So now what we want to do on our text holder is add one last effect called CC Glass. Pop that right on there. All right, and we're finished. That's done, completed. Send it to production. Looks beautiful. All right, so what we're going to do is go over, twirl open the surface, go to bump map, and change this to paper PC. All right, so we're going to go over to the softness, and we're going to change that to 10. Hit enter. Height, we're going to bring all the way up to 100. And displacement, we're going to bring all the way down to 0. All right. Now the light settings, you can mess about with however you want. The higher the light, the more of the highlights you'll get. Let's go something like that maybe. And the angle of light doesn't really do much. All right, so now we're going to twirl open our shading, and we're going to turn specular all the way up to 100. And roughness, we can kind of mess with this. See what kind of effects we get. And I think we're going to go with something like that. I think that looks good. That's a nice, we got some nice dark spots, some nice light spots. All right, so that's our CC glass. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our project, and we're going to find our second paper texture, which is, I renamed it to paper page. And we're going to put that right above our text holder. All right, so now we're going to hit R on the keyboard, and we're going to set this to 90 degrees. And we can scale it up, hit S. Scale it up, maybe bring it down. We just want to basically make sure that it covers the entirety of the text. All right, so on top of this, we're going to go to Effects and Presets and put on a tint, color correction tint, slap that on there. And then we're going to add a curves. So color correction curves. And we're going to do the same thing we did with the other paper texture here. And we're going to kind of create another pretty extreme curve. Maybe like this. We're going to test it out now. So we're actually going to go to our text holder and change the track mat to Luma Matte Paper Page. All right, so we can go back to our paper page. As you can see, the further we bring this over, the more spots that are invisible. And another thing we can do is on top of here, we can add a fast box blur. Put that on there. Maybe bring it up to 1 pixel. And turn down the iterations to 2. Repeat edge pixels. All right, maybe turn on our paper page, see what we're doing here. Oop, no. All right, that's done. I'm done messing with that. We can go under our text holder here, maybe darken this. There we go. That's looking a little bit better. Maybe turn down the saturation. I think that's what's kind of screwing us up here too. There we go. All right. And really, oh, okay. So another thing that I forgot to undo before I started doing this over again is deleting this curves. So rather than deleting it, we're going to add a curves to our texture background here, and we're going to hit reset. Okay. And basically what I did is I just kind of created a little S curve. Kind of get a nice little bit of extra contrast in there. And now I went down to blue. Kind of pulled that down a bit. And I went down to green. Pulled that down just a little bit to get a nice looking color. The green's a little finicky. You probably won't have to move it too much. All right, yeah, this is starting to look how it was supposed to look. All right, I'm going to get rid of this fast box blur. I'm going to turn this on. Let's see if I can find a better location. You know what? That looks fine. Moving on. All right, so the very last step that we can do here. So you notice we still don't have that that fade that we had in the original. So what we can do is come into our text holder, double click on it. And unfortunately with this stroke effect, you don't get motion blur option. But even if you turn on the motion blur here, still no motion blur. We have to kind of force it. And the way we're going to do that is go to New, Adjustment Layer. We're going to do Force Motion Blur. Add that on top of our adjustment layer. You turn down the samples a little bit, and for this we have to turn it up a whole bunch. Something like 700. Yeah. That much. Maybe turn up the samples. Get a nice little gradient going on. And you can see that we start having that little fade come in. All right. So that is it. Now that it's 9 o'clock at night, I can finish editing this. Again, go around and mess with some of the settings, find out what they do, what kind of different looks you can get just by changing numbers. And like always, learn, apply, and grow. And I'll see you next time.